On this episode of Jen and Friends for State 48 News, the return of a talented journalist.
You've already established this doesn't offend people. You already established this doesn't offend people. These are all facts that don't offend people. And then you put it together in one story and then like, oh, you weren't offended before. What's the big deal now, right? So.
Michael Mcdaniel returns to the West Valley, and we discuss the hot topics on everyone's minds.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Is that your home or is that background?
No, it's background.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Good. Excited to be back in Arizona and covering Arizona stuff because it's so interesting versus the Midwest where you have retail from the 80s still there, just kind of dilapidating and no one really cares about it, and it's a sad story, but yeah, I'm excited to do business again in the West Valley and offer it free. We're going to offer it free. So a lot of the insider scoop stuff, like the Buc-ee's that we kind of broke before anyone else did and then took credit for, or the energy with data centers that we broke that other people took credit for, will be free. And that's a contrast to what we did at the Goodyear Independent, where like everything was sub. So we're trying to build something that has a reputation, but also free. And then we'll see where we go from there. But the intent is to expand it in the West Valley. And, who knows? Sky's the limit. USA Today, is going down the drain. They just, my friend's a fact checker there. They just laid off 12 fact checkers.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so that all stems from Gannett kind of, selling out their existing structure to private equity where, CEOs get bonuses and then the company's leveraged with these loans that are inescapable to pay off. And it's just right now it's like almost like a Ponzi scheme where they're just like, we'll cover down, and it's not really fixing itself. So, but yeah, that's what's that's what's going on with Gannett. Who knows what's going to happen here in Phoenix with Gannett, but I think it's probably it's all connected, right? So like if Gannett as a whole goes down, Phoenix is going to go down, Indianapolis, everywhere they have it is going to go down. So we'll see what happens there. But definitely media is changing. And, you are a big part of that in the West Valley now, I think. So I knew you before you were, even a blip. So you would post a lot and we wouldn't get any traction. Now you're getting a lot of traction, a good amount of traction, which is great because people are, kind of want to see what's going on,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me, what are you doing now? You're back in the West Valley, and who are you with and what are you doing?
Yeah. So now I'm back in the West Valley. I'm with In Buckeye Magazine. So I'm the full-time worker for In Buckeye Magazine. So I'll be covering all things Buckeye. As you may know, I have, great photo, video, journalism skills, but then also, I like to toot my own horn that I have good writing skills as well. So I'm gonna try to do something very artistic in the West Valley, but also pay homage to the politics there because it is not Phoenix. The West Valley is not Phoenix, and the very salt of the earth people. There's Western people, so my art, some of the photography, and the people I feature will reflect that, and the businesses and the development will reflect West Valley development. So
I think we're so lucky to have you back out here because you're a phenomenal writer, one of the best that I've seen here locally, definitely. And I've always felt, since I moved here 20 years ago, I've always felt the West Valley is not represented. It's Phoenix media does Phoenix and some of the big cities, but I've always felt the West Valley has been underrepresented. So I'm so excited to have you back in this area.
Thank
And
you.
will you be doing any investigative work?
So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do business. Some things we can follow up, but some investigative stuff, is probably guy's not a board president anymore,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's stuff that we can probably approach later in the future if it goes there. So
So will you be following schools, business? Like what will be your focus then?
our business model is going to rely heavily on me being a successful business insider and reporter. And my rapport with like Tammy and Jordan and Goodyear is pretty solid. So, I've told them that you're probably the best comms department I've ever worked in, and that's not a lie.
Yeah.
Looking to expand that, get some insider information on business there, insider information on home development in Buckeye, water politics, data centers, industry, water usage, all that type of stuff, that is paywalled and given to other organizations. This is my ship to kind of pilot. So we'll see where I go with this. And school is definitely one of them. In my experience, it's not necessarily a heavy hitter as far as hits and all this stuff, but it's very meaningful to a lot of people. So probably, as I approached that before, it's been brief here, brief there, 400 words, and it's kind of shifted into a larger thing where you have so many 400-word stories it kind of evolves into a one big feature type of thing, and I think that's probably the smartest way to build some type of investigation in there because you've already established this doesn't offend people. You already established this doesn't offend people. These are all facts that don't offend people. And then you put it together in one story and then like, oh, you weren't offended before. What's the big deal now, right? So,
Well, I
yeah.
wanted to ask you about schools and travel. You were really the first person who started looking into a lot of this. What are your thoughts on all the travel in the schools and then reporting on that from your angle? How did you start looking into that?
Yeah, I think sort of the secrecy and like the underhandedness of some school districts, I won't name them, but you know who I'm talking about, where like I request records and like they're pressuring me while I'm like I have to go in person to pick them up, and they're being very underhanded and like mean to me when I'm picking them up, and I'm like, okay, this is what in my experience, as a man, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like, and so you dig into some things, maybe not illegal, right? But certainly unethical, certainly newsworthy to discuss, like all this travel. So I kind of really like got into in my head is like, okay, where's the opportunity for government to spend and misuse funds? Well, there's a lot of places, the city, sure. With the school district, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of travel. They get a lot of expenses and like, shoot, I think some of these school officials, like at least two or three of them are gone for a week out of every month. And is that normal? Are you that baller? Are you a federal official that needs to be out of the office all the time? Like, I don't think so. When it comes down to it, do the private schools do that constantly? Probably not. Do the private schools outperform public schools a lot of times? Probably, right? So, looking at the efforts with Doge and all that stuff, I think really syncs up with what I was thinking with. Okay, are we really being efficient? Because we know they have a great lobby, right? The teacher lobby, great. They want to get paid, all this stuff, that's great. But teacher pay is not the same thing as school pay, right? Like, and being able to audit schools and understanding how they're using funds or misusing funds. The confusion in the gray area that they use for bonds and all this stuff. Oh, if we don't get this bond at Liberty, we're not going to build a school, and then turn around 3 months later, oh yeah, we just started building a school. It's like, okay, well, you didn't need the bond to build the school. You're gonna build the school anyway. It's just like it was a big campaign to actually get voters to spend money to increase their property taxes. So, and where does that go? That goes with the construction companies that are partying with the school districts in some cases.
What do you think about PR teams in schools? I mean, some of the schools, it's even more than just one person running communications. Some of them have 4 or 5 people in a communications department.
Yeah, I think that's waste, but I think it's ways that like you see this like, okay, one communication rep is a board member at another district, um, and then that district, that person is a board member and has an employee that works at the district that they govern. So it's kind of like open, right? It's kind of like understood that that's the way it is. And it's one hand washes the other. Nothing illegal about it, right? But it certainly is. It does seem like a way to employ people and employ people. I don't know if like you need 4 people, like the city of Goodyear. Like they probably have as many PR people as a city, right? You probably need as many those people in the city, but a school district, I don't know. Like you're not open like 2 months out of the year or whatever. But it's ripe for discussion, right? At least I don't know if it's waste or not, but it is definitely something worth discussing.
One of the stories that you did that now I'm hooked every time I see it now
Yeah.
would be all this AI and
Yeah.
the AI driven mass surveillance that's going on, the flock cameras, all of that. And now we have this huge issue going through the legislature right now with photo radar. What are your thoughts on everything that's happening right now? And how did you originally start looking into AI?
ACLU was a very liberal, left-leaning organization, right? They're sort of the champions behind this flock and AI stuff, but it's really a bipartisan liberty interest. Like in the future, okay, you might not have the ability to spy on people, and or the government might not have that ability to violate your rights and amendment, but does a private organization, who has the ability to capture all your data and store it and not necessarily have it in your file, but it's accessible. They can find out where you're going and what your travel plans have been in the last few months. That's, even though it's not put together in a file, that's a privacy interest. So in the ACLU case, it's like a privacy interest for minorities, because a lot of times these go into minority areas where they're over policed, and it gives them a privacy interest. It gives them an over policing interest, and it stifles innovations and freedoms that could happen in that society. Same aspect with the story I did with Litchfield Park, where they're essentially gated. Litchfield Park is about 3 miles wide, right?
Yeah.
And they're gated, and they have cameras along the border of those gates, keeping people out, and make sure if they go into those affluent neighborhoods, you're going to pop up on a police scanner, and you're going to be in a database they can pull. So, I mean, whether or not you think that's a good thing, I had my car stolen when I was in the Midwest, and they use Flock to track it.
No, are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah. They used Flock to track it, and eventually they recovered it, but it was too late, right? They
Yeah.
smoked meth in it, they did whatever, and I had to destroy my car. And I was probably gonna, like, honestly, I was probably gonna get it back anyway. Whether or not they had Flock, they didn't capture the guys, they never did. And what's the big so what for me? Like I got my car replaced with insurance, right? So like you have to ask yourself, if your car gets stolen, do you want that car back? Because they're probably smoking meth in that car. Like
Yeah.
80% of the time, they're gonna smoke meth in that car, and they're gonna have to destroy that car, and you're gonna get a new car anyway, or compensated for it. Yeah, it sucked. It's not. I don't know if it's a deterrent. I don't know if it's an effective deterrent, honestly, because I mean they tracked it. They eventually found out where it was, but they weren't they weren't en route. These people don't want to. These cops don't want to put their life on the line over a stolen car. They don't
Yeah.
want to. They don't want to arrest a drug addict over a stolen car. Like, you know what? I don't have to die over this. Let them dump the car. Everyone wins. So for us to say this is a deterrent, or this is great in capturing stolen. I would love to see the statistics of that. Honestly, what it does do is build the surveillance state, and that's the God honest truth. It builds the surveillance state, and I don't say I don't trust a company to have all that data and or build all that surveillance. I don't trust the company. I don't trust the government to do it either. But I for sure don't trust a private company that I don't have the ability to govern over. We wrote about this, and these are facts. These are facts that they can use a system where they could draw in any camera, as long as the business owner signs off on it, to track and surveil. So in Scottsdale, they have thousands of cameras in their system, and they can kind of go willy-nilly decide which camera the police can to go into, just because they simply signed in to volunteer that information. So, it's building a surveillance state. It doesn't stop there. They're using AI, and this is the big thing about AI. They're using AI to generate mannerisms for criminals, and I don't think that's constitutional. Um, and tendencies like, okay, this person walks into this mall and they're doing this type of walk. It kind of looks like they have something in their genes. So the AI flags that. It becomes a gray area because, like, okay, did the AI flag that, or did you flag that? Did you subjectively decide to search that person because you're just going to use the AI as an excuse? So, and there's not a lot of transparency behind that, right? You have to pull teeth to get those records, and like, who knows if you can even pull a record where the AI flags that stuff. Like, you as a journalist, what file would you ask for? From the city, like, give me the AI flagging mechanism for someone who walked into the mall on this day. Like, what are you talking about? And it becomes very easy to gray out that request because it's like, oh well, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. We don't have that type of thing, and at the end of the day, we just lost the liberty, right? So, yeah, it really is a very nuanced subject. There's a lot of people behind that kind of surveillance industry, and a lot of conservatives. To be honest, a lot of money, a lot of automation, a lot of money might be going towards border in that industry as far as drone surveillance and all that stuff. So it's big money, and it's a machine that's already started. It's not going to go away unless there's some legislation that happens on that type of thing. And there's some great journalism done by Whitney Webb. I would reference if you want to check it out on sort of the Plantier, and like the Plantier is a billion-dollar organization that does this surveillance stuff that and defense contracts that is sort of like evolving into an industry that we can't stop right now, and it's our future. It seems silly. I mentioned pre-crime in my Goodyear story, and it is like it's being mentioned more and more in like surveillance journalism that in fact pre-crime is coming, and it sounds like Hollywood. It's real, like that's what they're doing. They're discovering ways to pre-crime it under the justification of good intentions, right? I don't know if I trust it. I don't know if I trust it to happen without my legislators fully understanding the impact of that. And it's tough at the state level because it has to happen at the state level. It can't happen. I mean, it could happen at the federal level. It's not going to. They're already steeped into like a lot of the big name politicians, and that are backed by tech.
So I want to ask you about water. Buckeye has been kind of the center for a lot of water policy, water issues, especially with their expansion and growth out there. Is there anything that you'll be looking at in particular as far as water goes?
I mean, we did look at stories where in the past where Goodyear is getting a lot of water, right? They have a sweet water deal, big fountain, right? Big recreational area, and you drive, 5-10 minutes out west to Buckeye, and this is an area you can't build homes. Looking at water politics in that vein, Buckeye is very much. When I spoke to them in my stories in the past, they're very much on the angle like, hey, there's something wrong with the politics behind water. We can blame a lack of planning, but I don't think that's the thing. I don't think it's a lack of trying. It's just the way cap water is allocated, and eventually that spigot has to run out when you go east and west. In the east, it runs out in Queen Creek, and in the west, it runs out in Buckeye. When before I got out of Goodyear Independent, they wanted to build a data center there, and AI based data center. And like in the application, I pulled that application, and it was like, oh wow, the AI is so great, it's going to create all these jobs, and like that's going to Phoenix is like number one in or number two in data center absorption, yeah, I think that's an interesting vein to follow, whether or not we're going to push on the data center thing. There's some talk that AI is a bubble, right? That it's destroying the country. We're investing so much money into it just because we're being charmed by these tech billionaires saying, okay, well, it's going to change our lives. It's going to make life so much better. We're going to have PhD level self-thinking AI bots that are going to change our world. Maybe that's true, but we have to see. But in the
But do they
meantime,
want that? I mean, I just
yeah.
feel like AI is now going to stifle human creativity. If you can just throw everything into AI, what do we do with our brains then? I mean, what happens to us as people?
Absolutely. I mean, that creativity is going to hurt that. It's going to hurt okay, you can say, okay, well, we don't need journalists anymore. We have these robots that think already and give us the facts already, right? Okay, yeah.
The facts
I,
they've been fed.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's countless times where I Google something and the AI is just completely wrong in the Google. I'm like, okay, this is not true. Like, and you have to do a little research. And it was like a mistake made by the AI, right? In that story I did, like they go through water, like just for you to answer a question at ChatGPT, it goes through X amount of milligrams of water, right? And we're the number two area for data center absorption, and we have a water shortage. I think the environmental issue here is huge. The power issue is huge, right? It goes through massive amount of power. We're already paying out the yin yang for water and energy, right? In the hottest area in the country. I think there's a lot of opportunity for journalism and AI. Because people just need to understand it a little bit more. There's a lot of partnerships that are going on, OpenAI with ASU and all this stuff. And a lot of these tech organizations have a lot of liberties over us, and there aren't a lot of laws in place to really discover that and or check it. And the whole thing about it is data, huge money in data. So, the politicians are a little apprehensive to check that, and if they are at the state level, they'll probably get their hands smacked by the bigger dogs, the bigger organizations that are gatekeeping that talk. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. AI is an interesting thing, especially in the Valley. That's like, hey, we're one of the top AI places because we can attract talent. We can build AI data centers here. There's an opportunity for me. The sky's the limit, So, God is good, and I think I have the ability to make an impact and or at least write a couple things that go like to start having another conversation here about AI, in the future for sure.
Do you feel that there's a shift in journalism? Do you feel that the little guy is able to have an impact now, or do you feel it's still pretty much mainstream media is king?
I do think the little guy does have an impact, and I think what X gives you the opportunity is to find some the second side of the story. There was a time in our lives where the objectivity was the objective in journalism. You tell one side of the story, and then you give ideas on the other side of the story. You decide you're a grown up, you're an adult. Now, and they taught this in Cronkite School. It wasn't objectivity. Objectivity was like, well, we can't really talk about like some of the other things because they're not facts, right? So I do think journalism has, in fact, changed from objectivity to truth, and truth is subjective. Truth is very subjective, and journalism has changed from that. It's not necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily merit anymore. And the interests of journalism have changed from things that can make tangible benefits to the community to something that is really focused on like selfishly on their identity.
Do you have a topic that you enjoy the most as a reporter and a journalist? Is there something that you really enjoy writing about?
I do like guiltily, like when I was an intern at Phoenix Business Journal, like, oh, let's let Mike do all these profiles on executives and like getting to talk to people and doing like telling their story and telling it beautifully is like, wow, that's really good. It's really fresh in my background, a master's degree in investigative journalism, but like, boy, did I want to go to get a master's in creative writing instead? Like, did I want that to happen, right? Being able to tell stories, show people that, I have a heart and I can write beautifully is definitely something I want to bring out more. And I think with the Buckeye Independent, or excuse me, in Buckeye, we're going to have the ability to, tell human interest stories. I can use my photography skills, my street photography skills to really bring an artistic vibe to it, and then also an emotional vibe to it, and do those stories that are well written. And so that's something I really want to do. I'm not going to lose my ability to do investigative work. I think that is something I believe in, but when I'm passionate for is doing art. And that's the aspect of journalism that has also been lost, is doing art in journalism. Like there's some great writers out there, but touching people, and I got slapped in the hand in journalism. I think it's about touching people first, and then the investigation second. So, but I think writing human interest stories is something I'm really excited to do. I'm a magazine writer now.
Now, you're a veteran as well, and I understand you're working with a new organization.
Oh yeah, American Veterans Magazine. So that is something I'll be writing for too. I have some great ideas in working with veterans, but there's been some great work, veterans telling their stories, because they're, World War II veterans, Vietnam veterans have the most awesome stories of survival, persistence, and reacclimation into society. Those World War II veterans are dying out, and then Vietnam veterans going through the same thing, even worse kind of PTSD, and Afghan veterans like myself that, have that disability, and how that, writing their stories would be fantastic, doing video interviews, getting some of their photos and their old memories in B-roll and producing that would be great.
Yeah.
But also writing about benefits and how benefits are changing. A lot of veterans don't know about their benefits and how they can attain them. It was 10 years before I got compensated for benefits that I rightly owned from injuries in the war. So yeah, I think that's going to be something special to me in my especially in journalism. But it's a nice feather in my cap to be able to work with veterans and write about stories there. So that's something
Well,
I'm looking forward to.
I'm so grateful you're going to be doing that. My dad was in Vietnam
Yeah,
and he passed away. He died last year, and I had to help my mom go through the whole process of homestead exemption and transferring benefits and doing all that. And we are still trying to learn all this and figure it out. I mean, it's really difficult. And what I found last year is you have to stay on top of it. It was such a difficult process. So not only was my mom grieving and going through that, she's 80 years old. And,
yeah,
I think it would just be so helpful to have someone like you going through that kind of information and educating the people on here are the resources, here are the benefits you're entitled to. I think that's huge. And then another aspect of it was I am still finding out information about his Vietnam days. He never talked about it. So
yeah,
when he came back to the US, you know, he was spit on, and it was a really, really bad situation. And so he just never talked about it. And
yeah.
I still don't know exactly everything that he went through. So I think I'm looking forward to your stories on that and hearing about that. And even though it was so many years ago, I think there's so much value in still hearing these stories now.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Well, I every time I talk to you, I learn so much.
Yeah. Who knows?
And
Maybe I'll expand into politics and or stuff like that. I think it's a void for sure in Arizona. Like they have some good people that have good intentions, but there's really opportunity to expand that into something intellectual. And hopefully I'm there for that as we grow. But I'm also going to pitch some type of stuff that'll happen, and we'll see where that goes. But how's State 48 going? Is that something you're growing as well, or
it's good.
yeah?
Yeah, we actually just had a really good meeting a day or two ago, and I'm excited.
I do think you guys have done a phenomenal job getting access and creating a platform, and I think that the next step for you is probably uh, print and like legitimizing that with good photos and a good print product at some point, maybe a quarterly or something like that. And I think that'll be a good step for you guys. And then that's something's needed in getting that viewpoint out there because it's not happening at all. So
I love it.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, good luck to you. And I look forward to talking to you again. Keep me posted on what's going on. If I see anything out in Buckeye, I'll definitely send it your way. I know there are a lot of good stories out there. So,
Yeah, for sure. I'm looking forward to speaking with you again. And thank you so much for touching base with me. We'll work together.
okay, sounds good.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All
Later.
right. Well, thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.